In this lesson, we're going to learn about increase problems. The problem reads, among New York City's 20 most expensive restaurants, the average per meal cost, excluding drinks, increased 5.5% to $90.13 in the last year. Find the price of this meal before the increase. With increase problems, you're trying to find the original value, or in other words, the value before the increase occurred. So the last sentence here really underscores what it is we're trying to find. We're trying to find the price of the meal before the increase occurred. So if the price of the meal is $90.13 after a 5.5% increase, then we want the cost of the meal, or the average per meal cost before the increase occurred, which means our final answer should be less than $90.13. So, how do we begin? Well, the textbook uses this box to help us understand the concept, so we'll do the same. First, let's note that the average per meal cost after the increase is $90.13. This is the part. Keeping in mind that since an increase problem is essentially a base problem, then, and also since base is part divided by rate, we have to we have to examine the problem closely and identify what's the part and what's the rate. And in this case, the full height of this box is representing the part. So the full height of this box is actually the average per meal cost after the increase. Okay. Well, the lower portion of this box, if you will, actually represents the base. So this part down here, the lower part, that is the base, or at least we're going to use that to represent the base. And in fact, the average per meal cost before the increase is unknown. This is what we're trying to find. But then when we take the per meal cost before the increase and then we add on this upper portion of the box, that gives us the new value, which is $90.13. Okay, so if the lower portion here represents the base, and if the base, we always think of that as the whole, then we're going to associate 100% with this lower portion, with this lower rectangle. And then since this part up here actually represents the increase, and we know the increase is 5.5%, when we take the 5.5% and the 100% and add them together, that actually gives us our rate of 105.5%. Okay, so if the part is $90.13 and if the rate is 105.5%, then we can use our calculators to determine then the average per meal cost before the increase by taking $90.13 and dividing it by 105.5%. And when you do that, you get $85.43. So that is our base. That is the average per meal cost before the increase. So with an increase problem, you're trying to find the base, and you find the base by taking the part divided by the rate. And the way we get the rate in an increase problem is to take 100% and to that add the given amount of increase. So we're going to divide the part by some percentage which is larger than 100%, as we did here in this particular example, which gave us again a base of